please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President McNall.
Here.
Vice President Clemens.
Here.
Trustee Headland.
Here.
Trustee Valentine. Here.
Oh, so I think we want the resolution to approve the agenda.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as written.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So normally this is the comments from the President of the Board of Education, but as you can see, Sean McNall is joining us by video. He's experiencing some health issues, and so I'm going to chair the meeting on his behalf, but he'll be participating in the meeting. Sean, do you have any comments that you planned to offer?
Nothing but my eternal gratitude to you, Peggy, for managing this evening's meeting. Thank you.
All right. Since this is sort of a last-minute change in plans, I actually don't have any comments either, so I'll hand it over to Dr. Benante.
Fine. We have a few presentations and recognitions this evening. I'm going to start first by welcoming our guests this evening. It's a pleasure to see you all. This is School Board Recognition Week, and it continues to be an honor to work among a dedicated group of volunteers who serve as part of the governance team for our community, our school community. You do so with no fanfare or little fanfare, very few thank yous, and inherit a lot of stress to become informed about the matters which impact our schools and public education. On behalf of our leadership team, our faculty and staff, and most importantly, the children of the community, thank you for your service to Haldane. And there's a small token of our appreciation at your seats there. And Peggy, if I can just refer to yours.
Yes, please.
It's for our audience members, it is a cutting board, however, with the inscription or a note that says, "It's so Gouda having you on our board," and then there's a small token of our appreciation there for you as well. So if the audience members could just join me in a round of applause and recognition of our board members.
You forgot to mention the gift certificate
Go
to visit the elementary school for an ice cream sandwich. I assume that this includes an opportunity to spend some time there, so that's very exciting.
There you go. Thank you. With that, we'll continue with a couple of other recognitions. I'm going to ask Mrs. Sniffen to come to the podium. And we have two students in particular who we're honored to recognize this evening, and I know they have some other family members here. Julia, I'll let you take over from here.
Great, thank you. So this evening I have the pleasure of honoring two distinct students that are here. First, I'd like Conrad to come on up. Right here next to me. Conrad has been selected to the 2022 New York State School Music Association Mixed Chorus. Conrad has been selected out of thousands of students that auditioned last spring at solo festivals throughout the state. All participants from across the state will meet in Rochester on December 1st through 4th. I hope it doesn't snow. We look forward to hearing beautiful music produced in Rochester. Conrad is a gregarious, dynamic, and talented actor, a musician, a runner here at Haldane, not to mention a phenomenal student. Congratulations to Conrad, to his parents, Shar and Evelyn, who's here tonight. Next, I'd like to recognize Aiden Sullivan Hawk, if he could come on up. Hoke, I did it again. I'll do that. They want you to come on there.
Oh, this side, okay.
So they can see you. Face the camera. Aiden is an intelligent, kind, and composed student. Aiden is a member of the Putnam County Youth Bureau and has served as a team leader at the Youth Forum, in addition to a starter on the varsity boys league champion soccer team. Aiden is being recognized as a National Commended Merit Scholar. Aiden scored in the top 3 to 4% of students across the nation that took the PSATs as a junior. He took the PSATs here last fall, and we were notified of his honor this summer. Congratulations to Aiden and his parents, James and Marianne, who are here this evening. Thank you.
Well, I heard they got the first one off.
That's right. We have that bye in sectionals, right, Aiden? Yeah.
They do play Yorktown tomorrow.
Well, good luck with that game. Once again, congratulations to Aiden and Connor. You represent the very best of Haldane, and we're honored to have you as students here, and congratulations on your achievements and recognition this evening. And thank you, Mrs. Sniffen. I would like to make a slight just shift on the agenda to ask our student representatives to speak now as opposed to as part of the report. So Kayla and Genevieve, if you can come on up to the microphone. And as a reminder, as you're coming up to the board, in lieu of having one student representative to the board for the entire year, we decided to access our student leadership who will be presenting or sharing some information with the board each month. We're starting with our freshman class leadership tonight, and then we'll progress into other classes. So go ahead, Kayla and Genevieve, you can start, and our board may have some questions for you after your report, okay? Thank you. Go ahead.
So first, we're going to talk about freshman orientation. On August 30th, we had freshman orientation. The seniors led us through different team building activities, provided a small group question and answer session, gave us guided tours that aligned with our schedules, and helped with lockers if we needed. The day ended with pizza. It was a great way to meet all the new students from Garrison and Manitou, in addition to the students who may have moved into town who weren't here last year. The seniors were incredibly welcoming and were a sense of reassurance as we saw their faces in the hallway for the first week. And then for the first few days of school, they were kind of challenging until we got settled. Adjusting to the rotation of classes and navigating the 3 buildings took some time to get used to. And it took around 2 weeks to get everything down. Power School has helped a lot in keeping us organized and on track. And speaking with our classmates, joining clubs and playing sports has helped us meet other students and upperclassmen.
For our freshman class trip, prior to the trip, we heard from Mr. Manning and Ms. Festo different resources available to us if we need support. We heard from Mr. Berline in regards to sportsmanship and expectations. For our freshman trip, we went to the Taconic Outdoor Education Center. It was really fun. We had an opportunity to meet new students that we didn't know, and the team building activities included building forts, fires, and low ropes course activities.
Thank you. Do any of our board members have questions for Kayla or Genevieve?
I don't have a question, but you go.
Okay. So the day you all go to the Taconic Outdoor Education Center, is that a school day? Is that like one of the days for school?
Yeah.
And is it all day or is it part of a day?
We left at like 7:30 and got back at like 2.
Yeah, that's full day. Great. Good. Thank you.
My question would be about orientation. If you had one suggestion to make on something to do differently, what would it be?
Something to do differently. Maybe if, like, before orientation, they could have asked, like, if they had a suggestion for anyone to be in their group, because maybe it was, like, a little bit more comfortable asking questions around them, like someone you knew, instead of, like, just being thrown into a group who didn't
Cool.
have any.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Genevieve. Now, for the audience, in particular the students and their families who are here, we're going to transition to an audit report. You are welcome. Yeah, Mr. Hoke, I was actually, I know you've been a part of a few of these. I thought you may. You're welcome to leave. Thank you again for being here. Thank you, Ms. White. At this, yep. Catherine, would you like to introduce our auditor?
I'd just like to take a moment to introduce Kylene Fitsik from Bonadio, our auditors. We just completed our 21-22 school year audit of our financial statements, and she's here to give you an overview on it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Good evening. My name is Kylene Fitsik. I'm an external auditor with the Bonadio Group and was the manager on your school district's audit engagements. We did recently complete the audit and went over the reports in detail with your audit committee. I'm here tonight just to go over a high-level summarized version of the audit results and answer any questions that any of you may have. First, I'd like to thank Catherine in the business office for all of their assistance during the audit. They were very responsive to our audit requests and well prepared as always. So there are 3 audit deliverables upon completion of the audits. The first is your financial statements. The second is your audit of the extra classroom financial statements. And then the third is the required communications letter. First, starting off with the financial statements. The school district's annual audit of the financial statements includes the independent auditor's opinion on the financial statements. We have issued an unmodified opinion on your financial statements. An unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we as auditors can provide you. The other report that is included in your basic financial statements is the government auditing standards reports. So this report requires to gain an understanding and report on your internal controls over financial reporting. We're pleased to say that we're noting no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies in the financial reporting over the internal controls. The second part of the report is your compliance with laws, regulations, grant contracts that non-compliance could lead to a material financial statement impacts. We noted one financial statement finding, and that's the general fund unrestricted fund balance exceeded the 4% fund balance limitation. The school district's limited to retaining 4% of the school budget in unreserved, unappropriated fund balance. The district was over that limit at 4.31%. As far as an overview of your financial statements, briefly, there are 2 sets: your government-wide financial statements and then your fund-level financial statements. They both present 2 entirely different pictures. The government-wide financial statements are on a full accrual basis, and then the fund-level financial statements are modified accrual. Just a couple highlights to mention number-wise. Your overall government-wide net position on the financial statements is as of June 30th, 2022, is a deficit of $43.4 million, but that is due to the effects of the other post-employment benefits, which drives that amount. Then speaking for just the general funds at the fund level, end-of-year fund balance was approximately $5.6 million. Fund balance grew from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22 by approximately $398,000. We also issued the school district's annual audit of the extra classroom financial statements. We issued a qualified opinion on those financial statements. It is standard for school districts to have this opinion, and most other school districts that we audit have that opinion. It's just a completeness modification with regards to the cash before it is received by your central treasurer. So that's a very high-level review of your audit results, and I'm open to any questions that any of you may have.
Kylene, if you could just speak to the fund balance matter. It's my understanding, and I may be wrong, that that's an issue that's impacting a lot of districts this year. And through your work, could you just help contextualize that and what factors may be attributing to it?
Yep, to put things in perspective in the grand scheme of things, when we say that the district's at 4.31%, When I looked at the dollar figures, the school districts, you're only $83,000 above where you needed to be in terms of looking at the next fiscal year budget and budgeting accordingly. Going forward, recommendations are to increase perhaps some of your reserves for, perhaps future capital projects, fund those reserves within the reasonable limit per guidelines, and then of course just using the monies, spending the monies going forward. But yes, absolutely, a lot of school districts that we audit have this audit finding. It is normal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would just say thank you for this. I appreciate the commentary on the 4.31. We had that discussion during the audit meeting, which was great. The thing that I would just take a moment and pause and commend the business office is that we often talk about, when we talk about our self-assessment and our assessment of the superintendent over the course of the year, we look at results exceeded as a position where you have a process that will sustain the change of administration. And in this case, we're actually in the middle of a change of administration from Ann Digno to Catherine. And so Catherine may have lucked out that she's gotten only a portion of the year so far, that much of it was under Ann's watch. But I'm super pleased that we've been able to continue providing excellent support to you, which is what I heard during the meeting as well, and that we're in the same position that we were last year. So I'm sure it will continue this year, Catherine, but that's something that we look for as a district, and it's great that it's happening and we're seeing it in real time. So thank you, and thank especially you and your office. It's great.
Yes, I just wanted to, can we talk a little bit about, in layman's terms, what that $83,000, right, $83,000 above where we need to be, sort of what that means just for general taxpayers?
Sure, and I can give you, provide you context on that and give you the exact page which shows the breakdown on how the school district arrived at that. On page 59 of your main financial statements, you'll see that the maximum allowed to have the district be at 4% would be roughly $1.088 million. That's the maximum allowed. The general fund balance ended up being at $1.17 million, which attributes to the $83,000 being over. There's a whole calculation that is derived of that. We look at what your fiscal year 23 budget is, and then your fiscal year 23 budget, $27.2 million, 4% of that $27.2 million gives you the $1.088 million of the maximum allowed. And like I said, the general fund ended up being at $1.17 million for the future.
And so I understand that it's not very much money, and it's not something that's of particular concern to the auditors, right? You just noted it because it does exceed the 4%. I guess actually sort of follow up on Maggie's question, like how does that, like, how would that happen? I mean, we know that our business office officials are super careful, and I'm assuming there must be some circumstance around it that was unusual or possibly?
I believe one of the circumstances was that there were a few adjusting journal entries that came about through our audit that we had to correct some balances within the general fund, I believe, and that is what then ended up causing the amount to go upwards a little bit per our corrections that we brought to the business office. They agreed upon making those audit adjustments. But yes, I think in the grand scheme of things, $83,000 is very minimal compared to what I also see upon other districts.
Because my recollection, and I raised this during the course of the audit committee meeting, is if we'd had full visibility to that money up front, we would have transferred to reserve.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
reserve.
Right.
And so my understanding is that basically when you're netting out encumbrances over the end of the year, we didn't end up spending as much as we had projected to spend. So we had that $82,000 in excess of what we thought we were actually going to spend.
Absolutely, thank you.
Is that right?
Kylene, help me out
That
here.
is correct.
Okay.
Spot on.
Help me out here. I think, though, when it comes to school budgeting, it is considered to be a sound practice to maintain a 4% fund balance.
That is correct.
That is a measure that is looked to when determining our fiscal health. our overall fiscal health as a school district. I know it's also considered, I think, when it comes to our bond rating, that's a variable that's often looked at as well, or our credit rating. So when we go to finance projects and whatnot, that's something that's concerned. So to be $87,000 over, by my quick math, is 0.3% over the allowable fund balance. I think it's within a $27 million budget, which is not the biggest budget, but that being said, it does demonstrate that both Ms. Dinio and Ms. Platt have been very deliberate in their planning and accounting over the course of the school year.
Sean, do you have any questions?
No, nothing that hasn't been brought up. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So I haven't looked at this agenda since Sunday. And I thought that there had been, and I don't see it on there, action to accept, right? And I don't see it on there. And I also we don't yet have the actual auditor's report yet.
So we took it off.
Okay.
We felt that in consideration of that, we have tried to be deliberate in providing the board with overviews, with access to information before action, and give you more than just a day or 2 days to review it. So we will put it on for action at our next meeting.
Right. So the letter and the full report, great.
Correct.
Great, excellent. I think the other thing, and one of the reasons why I went to go look for it on the agenda was I also wanted to thank, we have a new chair of our audit committee this year, Yes.
There we go.
Yes, thank you. I was trying.
Absolutely.
Yes, so anyway, I think we also want to thank Roman Daniloff for stepping up to that important role and for guiding the process as well. So really, it's many people who work on this effort.
And if I were more on the ball, I would remember the name of the other new member, but I do not. And so I
And so we
will
have a new
give her
member too.
thanks without her name.
Yeah.
Lisa.
Thanks to the audit committee. Okay. Great. Yeah. Thanks. Yes. Excellent.
Plenty of thank yous when it comes time to act on the audit.
Yes.
On
Absolutely.
November 1st.
You
Yes.
did a lot of thank yous.
Yeah.
Is that it? Any other questions? Or?
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Kylene.
Have a good evening.
You as well. Okay, at this point, we can progress on. I'm happy to welcome back Melissa Rankowitz. Melissa, welcome. It's good to see you again. Familiar face. Melissa's going to provide an update to our campus master planning process. As I shared with the board at our last meeting, some of the variables that we were considering and feedback that we had provided to CS Arch over the course of our last few meetings. Melissa's going to summarize that and give a couple of new representations this evening as to where we are in our thinking and planning. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, thank you very much for having us. So again, we're taking a look at our updates to the campus master plan that we have been developing. This is a result of a series of meetings to date that we have had with both the Campus Master Plan Leadership Committee, the Campus Master Plan Committee as a whole, and we did there was a series of, I think this is the 6th time we've presented on this just particular topic, and at a midpoint of those meetings, we presented here, I believe it was the September 20th board meeting. So since that meeting, we've had a few other updates, and we've been continuing to develop the plans you'll see today. Again, this is just one portion or one topic area of what will eventually be the full campus master plan, and we are still focusing on potential building projects that are larger in nature, focusing on gym, auditorium, student center type spaces. And then we'll do a quick overview of forthcoming topics, just so you can see what else is still on our radar. So I'll try to go through these slides as quick as I can to just give you a recap of what you've already seen, and then we'll take a little time to present the latest plans of kind of where we are now. On the screen here is what we identified as the potential building sites for the campus. These are not exact, boundaries, but just the larger buildable areas, and there are 5 of them that we've identified, numbered 1 through 5, starting with the west side of the main building, the east side of the main building, or northeast, where your playground currently is, this center land area in the center of the campus, which is 3, which would not be attached to any buildings, and then flanking each side of the high school, we have 4 and 5. So again, I'll go through these relatively quickly. If you want me to stop and overview anything, please let me know. This is option A, which was to build an auditorium at Site 1, which is that northwest corner of the main building, attached to that main building. This was option C, which was to build an auditorium at the other end of the northeast portion of the main building, again, attached to that building. Option D, which is to provide an auditorium and a gym at that same site. Option E, which is to provide an auditorium and student commons or student center at the center of campus. This was a 2-story plan where we connected both the lower and higher grades adjacent to each building. Option F, to build a gym at the west end of the high school, which is called Site 4. Option H is to build 4 classrooms and a student center at Site 5. And a reminder, why we landed on 4 classrooms is that is what is needed to extract instructional space out of the Mabel Merritt building and provide that at the high school building. We revised that since the initial plan to further define what this could look like. So again, this is a student center. It's a large space. You see that yellow portion at the furthest to the east. So that is a student center that the students would enter, large enough to provide them space for cafeteria or larger student events with different breakout areas. So this is also providing meeting space, student group work areas. It could have some staff development space. There's also a mezzanine area. So this attaches up to or connects up to the second floor as well. On the first floor, you'd have a reconfiguration of your stairs, 1 classroom, and then a series of offices to bring in counseling and social work. So we're calling this student support offices. I think we previously referred to this as a wellness center or a wellness suite, but this is really student support offices for that purpose there. And then up on the second floor, we have 4 additional classrooms. Moving on to option J, there was discussions on what could this look like at the other side or the west end of the high school. So this plan would really be replicated on both floors, so you would still yield 4 additional classrooms and a reconfiguration of the stair at that end of the building. Option K is what would an auditorium look like at that east end of the high school. So this is showing an auditorium working with the site grading just a little bit. Adding in restrooms to support that space and gaining 1 additional classroom here for music or band purposes adjacent to that auditorium so that you could really bring in some of the music programs adjacent to that space. This is option L, so this is probably where I think we left off with you at the last meeting. So this is option H, the last one we just saw, or one of the previous ones we saw, but flipped this to the west end. So this is gaining 5 classrooms and that multi-floored student center, as well as student support offices. Option M is now combining multiples. So now we're adding the last option L that we just saw and K. So now we have the classrooms and student center and support offices at the west end of the high school and the auditorium at the east end of the high school. Option N is taking a different look at that, so putting the student center or student support offices at the east, where we think is actually a better location because as students are coming up from the main building and needing to use the cafeteria, this could act as another entrance to that building that is closer to the main building. So we feel this is a better location as far as connecting the 2 buildings and how your campus works among multiple buildings. And this includes the auditorium at the west end of the high school. And then finally, taking a look at what would it look like if we added a gym to this plan as well. So now we're working with the site on that west end a little bit differently to provide an auditorium that works with the site grading there, as well as a gym in your upper northwest portion. And this would provide a shared new lobby, so you could enter that from both the north and south portions of your campus. So you could have large parking lot reconfiguration up top, enter into that lobby for either auditorium or gym events, and you can also access that same lobby or certainly have a nice view of your surrounding areas here from that lobby. And that is where we left off with these options. So certainly willing to go back. I just want to show you one more thing, though. We talked about the equity study previously, and one of the noted deficiencies we had found comparing Haldane to other districts was a square foot per student deficiency. So the average square foot per student was 205 compared to all those other districts. Haldane stood at 148, so there was a big discrepancy between the square footage per student Haldane is providing currently compared to the average. Looking at those last two proposed options, option 9 brings you in range of 181, and option O brings you right to 200 square foot per student. So you can see you're much closer or right in alignment with the average square foot per student. We just wanted to show you that for comparison to show you where you're getting with some of these options. Can I go? I don't think I can go back. So if you could, Megan, just as we're discussing maybe these last few options. I would go to N maybe, and we'll stop there. I know Maggie and Sean have been actively involved with us in the leadership committee as well as the campus master plan committee as a whole. I don't know if you have additional comments to add based on what we've discussed to date.
Has the committee seen all these?
Actually, option O is being presented for the first time today based on feedback from the last meeting. So the committee has seen everything through option N.
Okay.
And option O with that added gym is the only new one today.
And I had seen option N, but that's because I wasn't at the last full group meeting, but.
Yep, and I think O was talked about. It just, this is the first time we're actually seeing a graphic produced for that.
I mentioned that in the last full campus master plan committee, we shared option N. The response was favorable with the notation that CS Arch would look to incorporate the gym space as an extension of that lobby area, which is being represented here. They didn't see it visually in representation, but the general feedback was positive, I would say, with option N, and then the idea of adding the gymnasium space as an extension of that.
Yep.
And what kind of gym is that? Is the idea of adding that gym to have like more of an educational space so that we have a self-contained high school, or would that also then be the like I think of like the main gym downstairs is a gym where we have our athletic events?
So a few responses to that. One, we are still not reaching a self-contained high school. We feel that we did have a previous version that actually we identified just about everything that happens in this building that would need to be provided at the high school in order to make it self-contained. And we felt it was just too far a reach for this district. There's just too many shared resources that would have to be duplicated and staff that would need to be duplicated to make it self-contained. So we're not yet reaching that, but we are greatly reducing the frequency with how often students have to travel between buildings. So we're bridging that gap quite a bit here. In response, what was the first part of your question I wanted to respond to? I'm sorry.
So that was, and I guess, yes, it's not completely, but a more self-contained, and then also what type of gym?
The gym use, right.
Educational or athletic events?
So our designs are in response to all the meetings we had to date, not just with the leadership committee and the campus master plan committee, but many focus groups that we met with, and as well as your community survey that went out, and what are the deficiencies in the current Haldane community where we are not providing adequate facilities to support students, and overuse of the gym spaces here in this building rose to the top as one of the larger priorities. Overuse of this space in the room that we're in particular. And then obviously, gym and PE use is one of the primary functions that students are having to travel back and forth to. So what we're showing, you can see there's a lighter green box within the darker green box. The lighter green box is a full-size basketball court. So this room is sized to provide a full-size basketball court and then bleachers on one side of that. So it could be used for competition and exhibition use as well.
Okay.
And there's still no full cafeteria. There's there's a space for kids to eat, which is
Correct.
Which is
So
important,
there's no
but they-
cafeteria, there's no kitchen. Our thought process in discussing it with the group was this is something where the district could provide prepared meals that were, available a la carte and available in that student center. So the floor area was 15 square foot per student, which is tables and chairs seating for 250 students, which is the number of students you'd have to provide seating for, and that includes some of the breakout spaces as well. So it's used for, the upperclassmen that don't have a place to eat lunch, provides them seating, but throughout the day it could be used for various different purposes as well.
But it could, one of the main ideas of it is to provide a place where students can eat, receive food and eat, not so that they're not having to go all the way down to the bottom.
Absolutely, just not to the point where we're calling it a cafeteria,
That
because
makes
we
sense.
feel that there's many other purposes for this space. We realize and recognize that Haldane has, put importance in student gathering and social events as well as group work. I mean, every time we're here on campus, we're seeing students gathering, working on group projects together, but they're doing that in hallways and abandoned classrooms and in any little nook and cranny of space they can find. So this is providing instructional and educational space as well as cafeteria purposes.
I will say one of the things I do like about this option, I think I spoke to this the first time you all were here, is the issue of limited space for our high school faculty, which they're definitely functioning, but I think we can recognize that all professionals benefit from some level of periodic quiet time to do their preparation and thinking, as well as meeting space. What we know now in education, that for teachers to really continue to learn and grow, it's really ongoing and I think this is where the district is headed, job-embedded professional learning, where, folks are taking advantage of each other and learning from each other, and if there's no space for that to happen, then that's going to impede the ability for them to do that. Am I stating that fairly?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I like seeing the idea of, I don't even know, right now Mabel Merritt, is that where a lot of the social work, where are the folks? So
Support staff?
Well,
You said
the
social
support
work,
staff,
so I
yeah,
just wanted to make sure.
so the student support staff, in my mind, that would be people like the guidance counselor, the social worker, and where are those folks right now?
They're split between the high school and the main building.
Okay, yeah.
And this would provide the opportunity to provide them with adequate space themselves. I would not state
Right.
that the spaces that they're even in right now are fully sufficient. We make it work, as we do with everything here, but this would provide a more defined space and area for student support services.
Great, thank you.
I would first recognize that in this process, the last time you came, I needed to step back and remind myself, post fact, that this is a planning process for making sure that once we start on a journey of whatever it is we end up building, we don't need to shift everything halfway through. So for me, that was a useful thing to remind myself, because let's do transportation once, let's do student flow once, let's do infrastructure once, and then depending on, and I know there's going to be a separate finance committee that's going to get to, depending on the times, the needs, the interests of the community, you can stage the spaces as you see fit. So that was useful for me to do, to remind myself.
To clarify for any that this may not be clear, this is part of a long-range plan
Yep.
that is outlining multiple capital projects for
Yep.
the district working in the future. And we don't know exactly how many years that
Yep.
is, but it is multiple capital projects. And just for example, the plan that we're seeing on the screen here, this could be 3 separate building projects, one where you're building on the right, the east side with that campus, the student center and classrooms and support offices. Then you would maybe roll in the auditorium and lobby on the west side, and live with your current gym spaces now that you've relieved some of the stress of this room right here, and find out if you actually need to do that third large project of the gym. And at that point, you'll know if you need that. But this could very easily be 3 projects, and it's a long-term vision.
Yeah, so that was super useful for me to do. It was useful to hear the context for pulling for the additional classroom space linked to the high school as a interest to pull classes out of Mabel Merritt to reduce the cycle there. That's good context. I certainly, in going back and reading, so after the last meeting, I was like, I better go back and read all the minutes of all the meetings, which I did, and I encourage the public to, because I think they're all publicly facing documents. Yeah. So if anybody from the public who is watching and interested, you can read all of the commentary from each one of the focus group sessions that they conducted over the spring, and I think over the summer, maybe there's one in the fall as well, I can't remember. And it was great to hear what different constituencies, students, I think there was an alum group, I think there was administration group, athletics, arts, whole 9 yards, everybody was in, so that was great. I definitely, the interest in providing separate space for pull-out and one-on-one sessions with students, I think is super important for some of the reasons that you've provided, so I like seeing that in as well. The actual location of stuff, like I think we're down a I like not doing it on the Bell lot. I like not, but that's kind of just that's what I prefer, but not I like not doing it on the playground. I understand the impingement on potentially neighbors. I get this seems to make the most sense to me. I'm interested actually when you said that you were the Arch was recommending putting the auditorium on the far side and the student commons on the front. I would have actually done it the other way, just because I feel like the auditorium is such an integral part to so much of I would want that more central, and I would want the student part of the high school, that's sort of their space. So putting it, but just an opinion. But I appreciate the thought that's gone into this, and obviously the work that the committee's done. What are the next steps coming out of this?
Can I actually make one more comment?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, because I know I already spoke. Because I'm just thinking about this as I, because I brought up the comment of like, does this option, make the high school more self-contained, and you made the point not completely. I mean, I definitely recognize the potential, the actual benefit of not having our students have to go up and down the hill so many times, in different kinds of weather. I mean, I think there's real issues around that. And yet at the same time, I really value that this is a K-12 campus, and I think our students value that it's a K-12 campus, and so I don't think that my aspiration, since all of this is aspirational, that is to have a self-contained high school. I mean, I think I think it's a special thing. I think it's a special thing about Haldane that it is a K-12 campus, and our kids experience it as a K-12 campus, and our families experience it as a K-12 campus. It's a very unique, nice thing.
I love that. I've always talked about, as a kindergartner, you can see the person you will be. Mm-hmm. Every day you see the high schooler, the senior, they're around and they're participating. I think that's great. I like not having to walk up all down all the time, but I do like interaction between them. But again, that's an opinion.
Yeah, in 20 years of schoolwork, there is a very strong sense of internal community that we recognized here at Haldane, and I think part of that, a large part of that is due to the connection between the buildings and how you are currently operating. I think we can certainly recommend some improvements to reduce the frequency, with some of that travel, but I think you're functioning pretty well right now in that approach. And when we met with students, the students were did not view that in a negative light by any means. They saw it positively. We met with some recent alumni, and again, they reiterated that, it set them up well for college because it acts as more of a college campus. So as long as you're managing the safety and security measures, I'm not concerned with the multi-use buildings.
So it's a yes, and it allows us to hold on to the feel, if you will, of that some of our alumni shared, it reduces the frequency, but it still affords opportunity for it. So I feel like this particular design accounts for issues that we identify with the continued use of the Mabel Merritt building, both instructionally and from a health and safety perspective, yet still honors the feel, if you will, of our campus.
And I think it's, it's really exciting looking at this and what the potential new, spaces will be. But I also am excited to hear about the next steps also, which we haven't done yet, because, we're focusing on the high school, and I know that there's some concern that we're just focusing on the high school, but once you have that, then you could take some of that instruction and some of the time out of the other buildings, which lends itself to improvement in scheduling and facilities there. So it'll be interesting to move on to that and hear.
Yes, that's a good transition point potentially in that what's the ask tonight. So I think if option O resonates with the Board of Education, CS Arch needs to know that, because the spaces that have been identified or included here have implications for then how they will re-examine the existing spaces in the main building in the elementary school, as well as other site-based work. As you can imagine here, even the parking lot area looks to be somewhat impacted. So from other routing needs that will occur, traffic flow and such on the site, CS Arch needs to know if we're okay with this or if you're okay with this, so that they can continue into the next phase of their planning.
Does Julia like O?
Thumbs up from Julia. So yeah, that is why we started here, because this does have a lot of impact both inside and outside of the rest of your building. So we start here and try to nail down a pathway so that we understand what real estate may be available within the buildings to resolve some of the other deficiencies or challenges that have been identified in the site as well.
And I saw some head nods here. Sean, I just want to make sure, and I know you've been very involved in this along the way. How does this resonate with you?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I couldn't hear at that moment if you were looking for assent from everybody officially. If this was, and I heard that you made your recommendation for which, yes, you have my consent verbally. So there it is.
All right. Wonderful. So I think we just have one or two slides left. And I just wanted to kind of give a quick overview of the next steps or forthcoming topics that we have, so that you understand that this is really just one piece of the puzzle we've been discussing to date. So we still need to talk about proposed site work options. That includes campus circulation as well as athletic playfield improvements. Then we'll look at interior renovations, or this could potentially provide smaller additions as well. We don't quite know that yet, but this is not anything large. These are largely the interior renovation projects. And then proposed infrastructure improvements. So this is based on our review of the facility assessment, as well as your building conditions survey, which is being completed now, and our overview of just some of those infrastructure-related items. So this could be roofs, paving, plumbing, kind of the not pretty stuff. And then a lot of discussion we'll have about the strategic coherence plan and how that aligns with all of our recommendations as we finalize the campus master plan. We want to make sure that we are aligning with that. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you very much.
Actually, sorry, I'm not gonna let you go yet. Two more things.
Sure.
Yeah, go rock and roll. I'm going to assume that a continued focus on ability to leverage outside space will be someplace in the, the coherence plan part of the next steps. Is that correct?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
A continued use of our available and lovely outdoor space?
Certainly, and outdoor integration is for educational, instructional purposes, certainly a topic,
great.
Yes.
And second thing, again, this is potentially, this is a long-term plan, potentially in phases. I would certainly want to see, because one of the parts of the next steps was secondary impacts, right, of space free. So I would certainly, and I'm sure that you're going down this, but just to confirm that I'm wrong. So if we do phase one, define the phase, the potential cascading impacts of that are bound, as opposed to in order to get the cascading net benefits of pulling people out of here, you got to do it all at once. I don't want to see that. I'll just be very...
That's not helping anyone.
Okay, good, great, good. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right. So we're at the part of the agenda, which is the first opportunity for communication for the public. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. This first comment session is reserved for comments on special presentations and active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, please sign in and state your name for the record. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Disparaging remarks and discussion of district personnel are strongly discouraged. Although we do not engage in dialogue, please know that the board is listening, and we would ask that you leave your contact information with the district clerk for prompt follow-up from the board president or superintendent, if there's anyone who wants to make a comment. So now we're moving on to the part of the agenda that's our information reports. We've already had the first from our high school freshmen, and now we'll go to Ms. Jamin. Thank you.
Good evening. So we started our year with opening grade level meetings, which was a nice change, I will say, because the last 2 years they've been classroom level meetings and not coming together as full grade levels to avoid all things COVID, which has been less unifying. So we got together as grade levels and gathered and talked about what kind of school we want, and the students shared, and we collected that information. We have a building initiative springing from the answers they gave to complete kindness bingo, which has possible actions that can be completed at school or at home and through communication with their adults at home. And you got a pencil, which is what they can earn, and you know, and the warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you are kind to others, which we emphasized, but they also get a pencil. We posted school jobs, and we'll be moving into the interview phase for those school jobs in the next week. So the current school jobs available are morning announcements, environmental advocate to propose solutions for the litter on campus, a morning greeter, and I'm missing one. Oh, a photographer, that's right. Photographer for our weekly parent newsletter and our entryway board. So I listed some of the qualities our students were most proud of and made them feel like they were most qualified for these jobs. And I do have to say that I much prefer interviewing for these jobs than anything else, because nowhere else do I get to say, you know, I've been doing art since I was 1 year old. Yes, you should be. Oh, and painter, because we have an area that needs to be painted. So that's very sincere. She's been an artist since she was 1, and she thinks she should be the school painter, and I'm all about it. There were also questions such as, how would you argue in the question of, is cereal a soup? And they had to provide there. So a lot of interesting answers too. So much more fun than other job interviews. So we're moving into that stage. We had our first author visit to 4th grade. The authors of Our Lean on the Scene, which was the grade level read for 4th grade, came and visited and talked about the importance of using their voice and advocating for themselves, and the students got to answer questions. That was a virtual author visit. This week is book week, and our book fair is currently going on in the elementary library. And we had Mike Cavallero visited yesterday for our 3rd through 5th graders, the author of Nico Bravo, and then the author of Sailboat is visiting on Thursday for our K2 students. So we have another author visit. And then it isn't in my report because it was still in progress when these were due, but Sean, you asked about an update on what our arts programming was going to be, and I'll give in and give you where we're at right now, which is not a full program. So using our environmental ed coaster, our kindergartners went apple picking. We have Nature Nick coming in with animal programs. The third graders will be participating in a team building More the Merrier program in February. Our fourth graders are doing cooperative kindness. Our fifth graders will have a team building challenge course in the spring. And our third graders will be studying species variation. And then through our arts and education, which is the new addition to the budget, so far we have creative creations working with our fourth graders on native building, so building replicas of Native American villages. The first and kindergarten students will be working on writing their own pop-up books. We have an artist coming in to do art therapy and focusing on how art and your self-reflection can connect you to better self-regulation. Irene Garden is doing poetry. The Mohonk Preserve is bringing in a pond keepers program to inspire a study of species adaptation and creation of your own species. Corey the Dribbler is going to talk about kindness and do a presentation on self-reflection, author visits, and our garden recess program. And we're not done. There will be more, but that's where we're at today. So that's for you, Sean.
Are the school jobs regular? I don't remember. Oh, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
No, it is new. We're trying to increase their positive engagement.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't remember hearing about elementary school jobs before, and I was actually very pleased.
No, it is new.
Yeah. Great.
You can
That's
share
nice.
the applications if you want. You can join our interview committee and get your ice cream.
I know, it sounds good. No, I like that. And I actually, it's not surprising to me that there would be interest on the part of our students in contributing to their school, but it's great to provide them with those opportunities.
Sean, you had a question or no? Okay, good. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Jamin.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Selke?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your service. You may notice that you have a Haldane Middle School's True Blue pen, just as a small token from the middle school for all your work. And with regards to the campus master plan, I asked one of our new ninth graders at the start of the year, how do you like high school? And they responded to me, it's lots of cardio. So I think that they were really excited about like running around campus and feeling kind of grown and responsible for taking responsibility for being where they have to be when they have to be there outside of one building. So just a little observation there. Lots going on now that the school year is 7 weeks in session, believe it or not. Today, we had a K-12 regional data team join the work at BOCES. That's really exciting work. We have several more sessions. I look forward to reporting to the board the middle school's involvement in that. And it's very edifying to work with neighboring districts around data. So it's very interesting work.
Marianne, just with that, can you just share a little bit more? I know you're early on in the process and you're working with the other principals on it, but data's pretty broad.
Yeah.
So can you just zoom into that a little bit and share the type of
Yes.
outcomes you would expect from engaging in this work?
So each district was permitted to identify their own outcomes. So there's no standardized outcome. So each district is going with their own personal agenda. And our last session was spent identifying that agenda. And what we were asked to do, district by district, was to write the questions we have about data on large Post-it boards. And then we did a gallery walk with the other districts, which is really interesting because it's everyone there from like south to Valhalla and, all across the bridge to Sullivan West. Are they across the bridge? They're west. Okay. So, it's really a wide variety of New York schools. And we did a gallery walk and helped to clarify each other's questions. And then at the end of that session, the team, the district K-12 team came together to set some goals for the work. And one of our biggest goals, I think, is to have an aligned and unified process for the new rollout of the MTSS plan. Because if you recall, last September, Tara Rounds and Christine Jamin presented the MTSS plan, the board adopted it, and we began the process of rolling out that robust program. It's not only it doesn't only include academic RTI, it includes behavioral response to intervention, and supports the vision of the strategic coherence plan to make sure that we are reaching all of our students, so that we are supporting our vulnerable students, we're moving forward appropriately our students who also need enrichment, that we're just understanding trends in how our students are performing so that we can, inform programming through that. So we look forward to aligning K-12 so that our process is streamlined and can benefit our students and our programming the most. So there's going to be much more to follow on that. There's several more sessions. It's a really nice K-12 team that goes. So it's exciting. It's early days, but exciting. Other exciting work, tomorrow is the first meeting of the full group for the master scheduling. So the admin team has met several times with the consultants on the master scheduling, and those have been very interesting conversations because, as the board knows, all the elementary school, middle school, and high school are all on different schedules, and that that could definitely pose problems, and there might be opportunities there to streamline so that we could increase programming for our students. So tomorrow is the first time that the teachers will come in on that conversation, and we'll start to work together there. So that's exciting work also. Kim McCollum and Tom Vergidamo. Kim is our humanities instructional lead teacher at the middle school, and Tom is our science and math instructional lead teacher. They went up to Vernon, New York for the New York State Middle School Association meetings. That has not happened since COVID, so that's really good work also because, again, I think sometimes when you have a small high achieving school like Haldane, there can be a temptation or a kind of inertia toward, like, we know what we're doing, so we'll just do what we're doing because we know what we're doing and we're doing well. And that, although we do know what we're doing and we are doing well, it's always worthwhile to explore what other schools throughout the state are doing and what the best practices that are emerging are, so that you can keep yourself fresh and you don't become insular to the point where you no longer have best practices. So I think that that's great too. We're also participating in the book fair. This year, I have to really thank the PTA and Jennifer Swarich, because they're going to move the book fair from the elementary library on Thursday to the middle school, high school library. And this is going to make the book fair more visible to the middle school students. It'll also give the opportunity for books that middle school students may consider babyish, because sometimes the 8th grade students, when they see like the K2 books, they feel like, oh, this isn't for me. This is a book fair that's for younger kids. So it'll give the opportunity for more young adult selections to be placed out. So that is exciting. And middle school kids are gaga all over all the prizes for the scavenger hunt. So thank you to the PTA. And next week we have Red Ribbon Week. There'll be a Spirit Week attached to that, so that's an excellent time for students to think about self-advocacy and self-care and their commitment to themselves to say no to alcohol, tobacco, and other substances. And next week also, physical education classes will be going, for the middle school, will be going on their hikes, and their Tony Caldiero has done some research on some of the sites that we're passing. So there's an interdisciplinary approach where students will have the opportunity to look at local history as they hike. And we're just really looking forward to that. And another thank you to the EDI that has worked to include the Middle School International Club in Dia de los Muertos, which will be occurring after school in the garden on November 1st. So a lot to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back. I'm going to take this time, John Bauerlein is not here this evening, and John and I had a chance to meet to kind of just recap homecoming weekend and the homecoming festivities. So I'm going to take this time to talk about that and then just a few upcoming events. So homecoming actually took place over about a week and a half because Columbus Day was in there, and then on Wednesday we had the PSAT and SATs. So we really started homecoming the Thursday before. And students participated in events including anything but a backpack. I think you saw some of those pictures online. They did have color wars, theme days, pajama day, and of course the annual blue and white day. In addition to that, the tradition of painting the bell took place for the seniors, and the seniors had their senior shirts and took their picture on Friday before the pep rally. At the pep rally, the Blue Notes were able to sing the national anthem. We introduced both our JV and varsity teams. The shopping cart floats were unveiled. And we also had a chance to reveal our new Haldane Blue Devil mascot. So I would like to thank, since she was exposed, it's Christy DeRosa, who was our Haldane Blue Devil mascot. She did want to keep it quiet, but it kind of got out at the pep rally. The students will be taking part in naming of the Blue Devil next week. So it'll be open, and then we'll take the top 5 names, and the students will re-vote on the 5 selected names to come up with what's the name of the Blue Devil. In addition to that, there was then some friendly competition. We had ultimate frisbee, volleyball, tug of war, and puzzle challenges for the students to take part in. Following the pep rally, our students participated in the annual Scoop the Loop. I'd like to thank Deputy Tolvey and the Putnam County Sheriff's Department for ensuring that our students stayed safe as they made their way through the village. As it relates to the athletic events, our volleyball team won their homecoming match against Croton. Our tennis team played on Friday against a strong Pleasantville team. They were winning 3-2, but we needed to end due to lights. Only having 2 tennis courts, they couldn't get the full match in. Girls soccer did lose a close one in overtime to Croton. Boys soccer beat Croton convincingly. I'd like to thank Mr. Sauer. The first time that I've been at Haldane, our high school chorus sang the national anthem at the opening of the football game on Friday night, which was really nice. And the football team won an amazing game in overtime against Blindbrook. And then on Saturday, we had our dance here in the gym. We had over 275 students here in the gym. I'd like to thank Ms. Paparo and Ms. Granisi for all their organization and work on many, many of the events over the weekend. And then to wrap up the festivities on Sunday, we participated in the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, where we inducted Phil Kotnick, Lauren Etta, John Moranti, Nelson Delanoy, and both the girls and boys basketball team of 2007 and 8 that were state champions. Just a few upcoming dates to keep on your radar. 9/10 Parent Night is next Thursday, the 27th. The trunk or treat put on by the senior class will take place on Halloween from 3 to 4:30. November 3rd is the junior class fundraiser, which is an ice cream social in the cafeteria, followed by the student and faculty volleyball game. And then lastly, we are bringing back Friends and Family University on Wednesday, November 16th. And Katie Greer will be here. She's a nationally recognized presenter on digital health and safety. She'll be presenting to students throughout the day, and then she'll be here for parents that evening. The PTA is sponsoring a spaghetti dinner prior to that event, so we really hope to get a good turnout. We've got a lot of feedback over the last couple years about students on computers, computer usage, their digital footprints, understanding digital footprints of students, and so we're really looking forward to Katie coming here, and she's been recommended to us by Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening to the board and President McNall, Dr. Benante. I'm going to talk about 2 different topics tonight that aren't always stereotypically, I think, thought of when you think of the Department of Pupil Personnel Services. So the first one is about the fact that we have our student success teams up and running. So just as a real brief refresher, that's part of the multi-tiered system of supports, which we refer to as MTSS. And all of the schools have teams with practitioners from across areas of expertise who come together to brainstorm ideas and share ways that we can support students who are struggling in a myriad of ways. A student can be referred to the student success team by a teacher, a service provider, or together with parents working with the school. But the idea is to engage in database decision making and identify areas of struggle, to capitalize on a student's strengths, and to provide research-based interventions. So these tiers come in as you increase in terms of specificity or intensity or duration of the intervention. So a well-functioning MTSS system is really a crucial component of not just the general education program, but the special education program. And it can actually serve to sometimes prevent the need for special education in certain cases. But students, in theory, can sort of dip in and dip out of these kinds of supports as needed. And I bring this up because I have been attending all of the different meetings in the different buildings as a part of my own learning process to see how we're doing things and to really become acquainted with what resources we have and how we how we identify students that need support, how do we exit them from support, and ways that we can potentially improve on that. And that really does go hand in hand, not with just what Dr. Silke was saying, with some of the work we're doing with the data team, but also with our future audit that we plan to do for the Department of PPS. One of the companies that we seem to be zeroing in on, and there will be more on that, really feels that a really good deep dive into the MTSS system is crucial if we're going to look at our continuum of services across special education. So that's why I felt it was pretty important for me to be well-versed in the work that we're doing. I can pause for questions on that, and then I'll go into our threat assessment if there's any questions.
I had a question. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks so much for the report. I really appreciated that. And I know that this is all like a work in progress and figuring out, and lots of work going onto it. And then actually, I mean, in some ways, I think the main question I had might have sort of been answered by Dr. Selke's report, because when I read what you said, it was the idea of like students being referred by teachers and by parents. And my memory, and I'll admit, I didn't have time to go back and review the MTSS plan as I had intended to do before this meeting, but my memory was that there's really some pretty specific criteria that children who score X on this assessment, it would trigger a tier 2 intervention. And so it's not to say that I don't think it's important it is important for teachers to have to being able to refer, and parents as well. But my memory, and I just wanted to confirm that, was that there's some pretty clear criteria so that we're not necessarily relying on people making referrals, but there's actually processes in place for kids to be referred to tier 2 or tier 3. And I just wanted to make sure I was remembering that right, or please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. And so we do rely on qualitative and quantitative data, and certainly we can't really just leave it up to, our general sense of whether a child's struggling. So we cast a wide net. So we do use things like the NWEA scores, and we arrive at like a cut score, so that if a child does score below that cut score, that means we automatically take a look. And we're always about looking at data from multiple perspectives, but also triangulating data. We would never make a decision based on only one set of data. But for example, if a child did score low on the NWEA, and perhaps that child wasn't, the teacher didn't necessarily flag that child as struggling to begin with, that signals our team to say, well, hey, are we missing something? Is there something else happening here? And that will cause us to kind of bring everybody together, and say, what are we seeing here? What are the writing samples showing us? What is the reading level showing us? And we start to look at all different data points. And sometimes we find out that the child just really didn't do well that day on the test, right, and none of the other data points support that. But other times it says, actually we are seeing a trend here, we're seeing some weakness. And from there, the student success team might decide to intervene. And what that intervention looks like and which tier we should start at depends on how significant the deficit might be.
And I guess actually what I hear you saying, which I don't think I took away when I read the report, was that the student success team may also, instead of just waiting until, for example, benchmark assessments are administered 3 times a year, or there's some other sort of objective data like that, there's actually the room and the opportunity potentially to be more proactive, right? And so, and it wouldn't depend solely on that one criteria. Teachers could refer if parents are noticing something, that there's again, just a chance to be proactive and not wait until.
Absolutely. An example recently at the high school SST, we had a student who already has a 504 plan. He has a sort of a recipe to support the student, but the student was struggling as based upon input from the parent, but also based upon grades. So instead of just running right to a 504 meeting, we said, you know what, let's refer this child to the SST. Let's get all of the different high school teachers that interface with this student, and we also brought in the guidance counselor as well as the social worker to say, what are you seeing, what are you experiencing, what's happening in your class? And we were able to kind of put together a plan where we decided actually the 504 as it existed was adequate, but we needed to do a little bit more communication, a little bit more supporting the student with self-advocacy and using the 504, more use of 10th period, and so on and so forth. So that would be another way that we might come together to make a decision.
Right. Yeah. I like that. That makes sense, right? Instead of waiting for these, I'm actually not familiar with the 504 system, but I know, like, say, a child who had an IEP, right? Instead of calling a meeting, a special education meeting, or waiting, till the annual meeting, like the idea to be more proactive. That's very encouraging. Thank you.
And I think it's also key that you have stakeholders with different perspectives that come together. It tells you a lot and shows you things you might not have thought of. Mr. McNall, did you have a question? Because you leaned in.
I'm listening, but no questions.
It's hard to hear when you're remote. I don't know. I know when I'm remote, I always have my ear like right to the speaker, so it is hard.
It's the illusion of if I get closer to the screen, I can hear you better. That's what you're seeing.
I'll try to speak up. Okay, I'll be brief on the next part. I just wanted you to be aware that our district-wide threat assessment team has officially been identified. So last summer, there was training for our entire leadership group and other members of our mental health support staff in threat assessment. That work is going to continue with Altaris. We have decided to go with one district-wide K through 12 threat assessment team. And the idea is that we're not that big of a district, but also many of our people kind of know the students and the progression through the years and the families, and this way we can kind of pull the people that we think would be most helpful in a threat assessment situation. At the heart of the work of the threat assessment team is the ability to quickly and accurately assess a situation, to follow established protocols, and to determine whether a situation is potentially harmful either to a student or to a group of people. So once again, we have a variety of different experts, from school building leaders to mental health experts to our school resource officer that comprise it. And basically, we're trying to work diligently. We know that there has been an uptick in mental health issues with our young people. It seems that the pandemic has exacerbated what was already a sort of underlying problem. So we're looking at different ways that we can be supportive and collaborating with our community resources, but part of that is being sort of prepared and ready if something does happen here. And it's just one component of our school safety plan, which everyone is working on. An example of one of the things we're looking to do this year is that there are suicide ideation protocols out there. We want to make sure that we are using protocols that are sort of cutting edge and also that are developmentally appropriate, because the same questions you would ask a senior who was struggling are not the same questions you'd ask a fourth grader. So we're working on that, and that's actually one of the projects that one of our school psychologists is taking on this year as part of one of her goals. Any questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I just have a few updates I'd like to provide in the curriculum area. As Dr. Silke had spoken to earlier, our work with the building master schedule work continues to evolve, and I'm not going to rehash what Dr. Silke said. I think that what I would like to just say about that is that I think we've all approached this work from a student-centered perspective. The whole idea here is to look at our 3 building master schedules, which are different, and to be thinking about ways that there may be improvements that could improve the educational opportunities of our students. This isn't to say, quite frankly, that anything is wrong with our building master schedules, and I think one of the really enlightening pieces out of this work is that if you look at each of the schedules, they're very purposeful and intentional in the way that they were built, and they serve students very, very well. I think that the work here is to just take a step back and to examine these kind of from a K-12 perspective and see if there are ways that changes could be made which just enhance that opportunity. Tomorrow is the first meeting of the committee, which encompasses the 5 administrators and 11 faculty members. And I think tomorrow is really about building awareness. And I think our building principals are literally just going to share and walk through how the schedules operate. I think that's important learning for understanding. I think first grade teachers don't really know how the high school operates, and the same thing, the high school doesn't really know the factors that go into an elementary. So I think that one of the very first steps that the administrative team and I had come up with is just really trying to gain a better understanding of our faculty and committee about how these operate, the ways in which they're built, and the intentionality that's behind them kind of moving forward. So there's that. The K-5 Math Committee reconvened at the end of September to kind of lay out a timeline as we continue the work. So we reviewed the work that we accomplished during last year and set out a kind of a timeline and a system of events for kind of arriving at a situation of adopting a new program. I guess I'd say the 2 key highlights of that were 2 opportunities for the teachers to go in more depth with the programs that we've looked at, which is currently underway. And we've been able to, Christine Jamin and I have been able to look at 2 neighboring school districts that are implementing each of the programs and looking to set up visits to those schools where we get to learn from teachers, allows our teachers to learn from the experiences of other teachers who had recently gone through that transformation. And we think at that we'd have a really good holistic kind of view of these programs, which is the reason we paused at the end of last year to give ourselves a few more months here of really in-depth work before we got to an adoption process. In keeping the theme of elementary, our elementary teachers had their first on-campus session with our literacy consul, Megan Hargrave. And these sessions provided grade-level teams an opportunity to come together, share best practices in literacy instruction, and really talk and explore ways we could create common experiences for our elementary students as they go K through 5 through the elementary schools, capitalizing on these processes. And this work will continue November 7th through the 9th when Ms. Hargrave is back on campus to continue this work.
Actually, I had a question and a comment. I remember the comment, but not the question. Let's start with the comment. I actually probably could have just emailed this, but there has been fantastic reporting in Education Week and in New York Times on all the work related to the science of reading, and I could actually go and find that. But there was a really good special report from Education Week on the science of reading. And then I think there was also an article recently, I want to say about Mississippi or Alabama. Like, it's actually southern states, a number of southern states have adopted science of reading legislation, and it's making pretty tremendous impacts on their literacy skills of their students. So anyway, there's a lot out there, and it just occurred to me as you were reporting on that I wanted to share that information. So
thank you.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, the literacy consultant is coming out of an observation last year over the budgeting process that we had some opportunities to enhance the literacy training and accessibility for our primary grades, and this is a result of that budget allocation, and therefore, great, thank you. Yep, love it.
Thank you.
Oh, and actually, I just want to point out that Mr. Bauerlein isn't here today to give his report, but it sounds like Mrs. Sniffen, you gave some of that information. Yeah, good, great, okay, thank you, please go ahead.
Good evening. Facilities Department continues to provide support to many of the events that take place throughout the campus. I feel like I refer to this quite a bit, but it seems to be
It's because you guys are working all the time.
it's such a significant part of the work which we do. Since the commencement of school, we provided transportation over 95 away athletic competitions and supported over 60 home and extracurricular activities. And this is all in addition to the work that we do daily. Since the commencement of school, we've also completed and closed over 110 maintenance work orders that got placed through our school dude maintenance work order system. Since I referred to transportation, I'd also mention, which is not in the report, that we did receive a new bus, a large bus for our fleet. It's bus number 96. It arrived last week. It took about a year to build since our letter of intent was placed in about a year ago, and that's just the environment which we live in with material delays and such. Last year, we received the bus about 4 to 5 months earlier than we did this year with the same time of ordering. Fuller and D'Angelo, our district architects, continue to be on campus in regards to our capital construction. They were on site to do a punch list or complete a punch list for the mechanical and electrical project. It's very minor in nature and doesn't impact any of the systems that were installed. That'll be repaired over the next, or completed over the next few days by the contractor. And they're continuing the design phase of the abatement of the Mabel Merritt, both the flooring systems and drop ceiling systems. We hope to have that completed by the end of the design phase completed by the end of the calendar year and submitted to the state for review. That's all. Thank you.
Just one question. Did we ever get that air conditioning study we were looking?
I have a draft form which I just received, which I'm reviewing, and I'll share that once I'm able to review it with the. There's some changes that need to be made or confirmed with the electrical engineers who completed it.
Thank you.
Question, just for context, that bus we just got, that was part of last, not this 4 month, 5, whatever, this spring, previous spring budget vote?
It was in the proposition that was just recently voted upon.
Yeah.
We can sign a letter of intent with the contractor or the builder.
Got it.
And we're only obligated to purchase if the proposition passes.
Got it. So we signed a letter of intent, put the proposition on, proposition passed, bus received, but still substantially after we would have
Correct.
thought. Okay, cool.
Just on the note of school buses, I'm seeing a little bit more about electric school buses.
Yes.
As I know, it's been an interest with the board, and we've put that on hold. There are some good opportunities there for us to potentially bring on an electric school bus. One thing we were concerned about is the infrastructure that needs to be installed and how that would fit in a campus plan design. So as we coalesce around some ideas like we did tonight, and some further ideas over the next few months, that will put us in a better position to consider whether or not it's time to consider accessing some of the opportunities that are available to us to have or include an electric school bus as part of our fleet. So I just wanted to mention that because seeing some of those buses come online locally.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we actually just have one consent agenda item on tonight's agenda, and that's to approve the minutes from our last meeting on October 11th. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Thanks. All those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right. So now we're going into board committee reports. The policy committee, actually I'm realizing I have a question that I'll just go ahead and bring up now. So the next steps for revising policy 1510, which would apply to tonight's situation, which is allowing a board member to participate from home without announcing their location publicly because of unusual circumstances. I don't know if I remember what our time, I know we need to have a hearing.
We have to adopt, but we also have to have written procedures.
So we need to come up.
So we need to do those.
We
yeah.
need to do those. Okay, great.
And I think we meet again on the 1st.
And that's the only other update that I wanted to give the board was that the policy committee will meet again on November 1st. And we keep moving along. Sean, do you feel up to giving a report about WPSBA?
I'd rather postpone that
Yes,
until
okay.
the next opportunity to report out.
Yeah. So Sean can give us that report when he's able to join us in person. So now we're moving into the section on unfinished business, and we want to return to the conversation that we've been having about the non-resident tuition rate with Garrison. And I think, Dr. Benante, you might have some information to share with us first.
Sure, I'll just, I won't go into all the background information. I feel that the board is well versed and apprised of the factors that have influenced this discussion between last school year and thus far this school year. I do want to make note of that Mr. Albano, the Garrison superintendent, and I had a conversation earlier this school year around the importance for both districts to have an understanding of what arrangements, if any, were going to be made by the end of October to avoid a situation and potential disruption to the budget development process that we could encounter in the absence of such understanding later in the year, which I think both districts want to avoid. Also, on the students' behalf, it's Garrison has agreed to pull up their student commitment date to the end of December, which is a good thing. Yet we want those student visits often occur in or begin in November. So obviously we want to try to avoid the potential disruption to students being on site, visiting the campus, and then deciding later or finding out later that they indeed may not have an option to attend Haldane. So thus the reason why we're here, why we're discussing this matter in October, a short time from when we last discussed it through the spring of last school year. So I'll start with just a few notes, and a recommendation. My recommendation, just to cut to it, is that we continue the current agreement with Garrison for one more year, while a joint committee or group of representatives of some sort from Garrison and Haldane meet to determine if an alternative agreement can be arranged. This would seek to address what I believe to be Garrison's need for anticipated costs and could provide us with anticipated revenue, which we do not have in the current model. As John noted during last week's meeting, we don't know what revenue in any given year that we're actually receiving from Garrison, yet we're providing them with an assurance of tuition stability. And I think we understand why that's important to them, yet at the same time we sit somewhat in limbo in any given year until we understand how many students indeed we may be receiving. So having a group work together and that has the space and time to examine what, if any, other models could be considered, I think will help us arrive at what would be perceived on both parties and as a win-win. I don't think we're necessarily there yet. I think Garrison could very well have something that works for them, but the unanticipated nature of any revenue that comes into us is a concern of ours. And I think it's important that Garrison be given the opportunity to have the space to engage in conversation with us about that. And I don't think that's occurred up to this point. No fault of theirs. They have a significant budget issue, which we've heard from them continually. Mr. Schatt reinforced last week, and that's what's front and center for them. We do receive approximately $600,000 to $900,000 in revenue from Garrison, or have over the past 5 school years. As Peggy had noted at the last meeting, our budget development includes this revenue as a means of expanding our program offerings or offsetting our budget deficits. A significant reduction in this revenue stream would need to be offset in other areas of our budget. These may directly impact our high school students or other areas of our school district. It's impossible to say because we're not in that situation yet, but that being said, it's a significant amount of money that would need to be resolved somewhere through budget development. Lastly, as I think Kent, and I want to honor what Kent shared with us, I think there is an inherent expectation that the school districts in some way will be able to come to terms on an agreement that allows all Phillipstown residents to attend their local high school together. That's something you're probably more attuned to than I am with respect to your conversations with your neighbors and such, but I think that expectation is there. This short-term arrangement would honor our commitment to that, yet also provide us with time that I think is necessary to examine an alternate tuition model. I'll have some other thoughts along the way, but I think that's plenty to start with and open it up to the board.
So what is the current agreement allows for an increase of, is it CPI?
It's 2% or CPI,
whatever
whichever is less or lower.
I mean, I like it. I think that, I think moving forward, it would be nice to sit down with them and hear a little bit more. I mean, you guys have already done that, but just in general, I'd love to hear from them beyond Kent. I sort of know Kent's position on it, but, I watched Garrison School Board meeting last week, and my perception from that meeting is they've drawn their line in the sand, which is fine. I can understand why they need to do that, but if it's about more than just the numbers, then I think I need a little bit more to sit down and to sign anything long term. I mean, which I'm not sure if that's fiscally responsible for our taxpayers, but we can't argue with revenue either, right? So we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose the Garrison students. So hopefully they're open to discussions moving forward that works for both of us. So.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say other than what Maggie says. I think the 1 year, I mean, there just hasn't been time to have more of a conversation, and I think I'll just speak, just to reiterate sort of what I spoke to last time. I realized that, and I was speaking about it financially, and I don't want to limit just to that, but I mean, I think having the Garrison students come to Haldane benefits Haldane. I mean, it's obviously benefits the families who've made those decisions because they've decided that it's the best thing for their children. But I think having an influx, our students are pretty, lead pretty insular K-12 lives. I mean, the biggest influx of new students that really are, most of our students have is when the Garrison students come, and it brings new faces, it brings new perspectives, it brings all the strengths that those students have, and and also, I mean, again, just to reiterate what Maggie said, that's it. It helps supports the program of our high school, and we're able to accomplish a lot for a relatively small school, and that's something I think we want to consider. And I think having another year to think about this is the best thing for us to do.
Yeah, I get it totally. The need to get some decisions soon totally makes sense. Right? They need to know, the kids need to know, we need to get this all done. However, I think you made a good point. Like, there are longer term implications that we need to think through. I think giving us time to have a conversation together to figure out how can we do this, I think is worthwhile. There are definite benefits for I was standing on the modified soccer field today, watching half of Garrison boys and half of Haldane boys play soccer. And you're like, that's who they've grown up with. And there are benefits to class size, diversity, of being able to field a girls' soccer team depends on the fact that we have some girls coming from Garrison, right? So all of that starts to feel less secure just from sheer number. Then you get into the finances, right? And I also totally get it that they're up a creek, right? To be cognizant, they're at whatever 9% tax rate. If they raise their tax rate by 100%, they probably still wouldn't be at our tax rate, and that would never pass, right? They'd have to do sequential tax levy breaks for the next 20 years. That's never going to happen. They barely got one through last year. So I totally get the bind they're in. So why I think there's an opportunity for I know where they are. I know where we are. I know we all benefit from them having choice and from Garrison students coming here. Let's take some time to figure out some creative solutions to it. It totally makes sense.
Sean, is there anything that you want to add?
No, I've appreciated sitting and listening to the three of you and Dr. Benante both sort of reiterate what we've been learning over this process. But I'm also just sort of, I want to highlight, having attended the board meeting last week at Guff's and sort of sat in the negotiations with their officers as well as the superintendent. I do feel like everyone is, negotiating in really good faith and with full transparency in a way that speaks to me of a very productive relationship moving forward. So I do feel like having these, what I think will be fundamentally philosophical conversations about our relationship over the next year as we think about setting the tuition is a useful opportunity that all of Phillipstown, I think, in one way or another, will appreciate. And I'm certainly in favor of what Dr. Benante's proposed. So, thank you.
So I think you have from us what you needed to get. So we're not taking any action tonight, right? The action would happen.
That's the unique piece about this and how it's set up
Right.
is that it's a contract you see later this school year, if not at the beginning of next school year, but at the same time, given its implications, these are discussions we need to have now. So it seems that the board's in agreement that I can convey to Garrison and Mr. Albano that a similar structure will be in place for its current 8th grade students to attend Haldane next school year. That will assist in our planning and their planning, and then we will talk about the longer term discussion and implications at another time.
Like hopefully starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
To a certain, because that's what we're buying.
We won't put it off.
Yeah. Because that's what we're
shouldn't,
buying. Yeah.
All right, so I think now we want to turn to the other issue that we have on the agenda about unfinished business, which is to continue our conversation about how we, as a board and the district, want to handle how we follow up when there is public communication at a board meeting.
Yeah, and I shared with the board, just stemming from the retreat, the Wappingers model where they have a designated area of their website that is used as follow-up from public comment. And that's a space that's open for the community to access. And speaking with Megan, that's something that we could set up on our website. If it probably will look a little different, but that being said, if that's a way for the community, that the board is in agreement for the community to follow up if they're interested in what the response was to a question, then it would be posted there.
I like, and just as a reminder to myself, this came out of a couple of pieces of input from the community that to our public comment guidelines, we do not engage in dialogue, and there are a number of good reasons for that. We often don't want to speak extemporaneously when there is a board decision to be made. We may not have all the information, so very often the appropriate response is to collect our response and return. Mm-hmm. The comment is nobody sees the return. You're going to follow up with me in an email, and I'm great. This way provides more transparency to any member of the community who saw the initial issue, and then we'll see the response from I think it's a great way to go about it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at it now. It's great. Great. I had to go back to the Friday report. That's where you had.
I'm sorry. Yes, I listened to the
No,
Friday
that's
report.
okay. Yeah, that's great. So that a question that's asked here will, if there's an answer, it'll be posted for everyone. Yeah, that's important to many community members.
Yeah, and I would say that, depending on how successful a portal and or instrument it becomes, we can see, I can imagine, on some issue having 12 different people come, suddenly they know we'll respond. So I think as we move forward, if suddenly we do get a lot of positive conversation, happening in open meetings, then we can make whatever necessary determination has to happen so that however we address all the different issues under consideration, we can do so. But this is a great first step, I think, and it will mean a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
Thank you.
And I didn't. I did actually just close my agenda, so now I just have to look at the paper version.
Second to last page.
Okay, all right.
So will you please read the resolution?
CSE CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committees on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
May I please have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the next item on the agenda is for us just to be aware that I think it's at the next meeting. Yes, we will have the opportunity to vote for one candidate to represent Area 10 that we're a part of on NYSBA. We did vote. Actually, I don't know if you all remember, we actually did vote on this last spring, but the person that we voted for wasn't not reelected to their Board of Education, and so we're now, and you can't be a NYSBA member if you're not on your Board of Education. So it's actually the two candidates that are here before us are actually the same, the women that ran against, or who were also ran for this position last spring. And I think we've received emails from them, their bios are attached, and so I think what we just want to do is at the next board meeting, be prepared to have a conversation and just really, I guess, vote to see who we want to support.
Great.
All right. And so now we'll go to the next item. So Megan, if you'll read the resolution, please.
The approval of the Memorandum of Agreement between the Haldane Board of Education and the Haldane Administrators Association Successor Agreement dated October 11th, 2022. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves and ratifies the Memorandum of Agreement between the Haldane Board of Education and the Haldane Administrators Association dated October 11, 2022, regarding a new successor agreement effective July 1, 2022 through July 30, 2026, and authorizes the superintendent to sign the agreement on behalf of the district.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So is there anything anybody wants to say? Any questions?
Just thank the Administrators Association for a very collaborative negotiation as such things come in leadership. We had 3 contract negotiations last school year, and the administrators were last, and I think understandably so, and that's our role and responsibility at times is to wait, and they were very patient, and we had a very collaborative process, and we're able to arrive at a fair agreement for the district and as well as for our administrators.
Great, thank you. And thanks to the administrators. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. So we're now at the part of our agenda where we have the second opportunity for any communication for the public. This can be related to any and all school district matters. Nope. All right. Board reflections. Does anybody have board reflections?
Yes. I just wanted to commend and show appreciation for the Haldane PTA for Book Fair Week, which is, for people who love books, for kids who love books, is always really exciting. And maybe hopefully for kids who don't love books as much. It's so creative, the programs and activities that they have created around the Book Fair Week, including, I just wanted to highlight the book swap. I don't know if this was like something that was proposed and enacted last year, where families can bring in a book and then they get to swap it, obviously, at a table, which is such a nice avenue for kids to participate. I do have a complaint that I've had for a couple of years, and it's not just from me, it's from a handful of families that I hear about that. Obviously, it's wonderful, and I can understand the reasoning behind partnering with our local bookseller to provide the books, but it's substantially, in some cases, more expensive than going with one of the big conglomerates like Scholastic, and it's expensive. And I hear about, like I said, it's an issue that I hear about regularly. And I know that PTA makes their own decisions, they're independent, but moving forward, if there's any way we could sort of engage in conversation. To have, some more affordable options for kids, because it is, even though it's, put on by the PTA, it happens inside the school. Kids are going with their classes, they're going with their peers, and, there's potential for social pressure, peer, when kids have money and kids don't have money. So I just wanted to throw that out there, something that I'm hearing this week. But overall, it's a wonderful week. So.
I would just throw a big shout out to Tim for putting out handicap parking spots at homecoming. I know it was appreciated. I saw a woman sitting in her car watching the game from up top. It was great. So thank you very much for that. I'd also note a fantastic representation from soccer players at the students tonight. I think 3 out of the 4 were soccer players, and I'll leave it at that.
Sean, do you have anything?
Just gratitude for all of your patience while I finish out my last day of isolation. So I look forward to being in person next time. So.
Well, and I have gratitude to you because often when I look back, you were coughing. So it was really, thank you so much for joining. And I just had one board reflection. Actually, I realized at the very beginning of the meeting, I forgot to mention that the next meeting of the Haldane Central School District Board of Education meeting will be on November, now I don't have it in front of me, November 1st, and we'll be meeting here. Is that right? No, or will we be meeting?
I think you, Sean, and I, during agenda prep, will be discussing meeting location, just because
meeting
preparations for the play are ongoing, so I plan to speak to you during our prep, just of whether or not we're comfortable with a different spot on campus.
Okay, so meeting location to be determined. And I actually, I don't know why I read it all the time, but I just wanted to point out that the most recent issue of Haldane Horizons arrived in my inbox last week. And I was thinking back, and Megan can help me, can correct me if I'm wrong, but really I feel like we started writing that publication a number of years ago when there was a request from the community for more communication from the district about the kinds of things that are going on. And I just took a look at the document a little bit differently than I have in the past. And, I really appreciated, for elementary, middle, and high school, it covered, some exciting educational activities that were happening. It gave a heads up about what was going to be happening for homecoming week. And I think it's great. And I know that the current version is posted on the website, but I actually think we also want to figure out a way, maybe we want to add a link if people want to go back and look at previous versions, because I couldn't figure out. It's there? I couldn't find it.
It's under Dr. Benante's page.
Okay, so that's the tricky thing sometimes, is how to find things from the website. But anyway, if folks haven't had a chance to look at it, I encourage you to do it. It's actually really quite lovely.
It's under my page.
Oh, under Dr.
Superintendent?
Right.
I think that's my page.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
And
that's what it's called.
And Dr. Benante?
Yeah, just one thing, I believe. Given the timing of our next meeting, I wanted to mention that we had discussed previously hosting a health and safety forum. That last June, there were some inquiries on the part of our community members regarding some of our processes and procedures related to health and safety. Given the timing of the year, June was not a good time to host such a forum, nor is September. Just a lot of people are coming back to school. We plan, right now we have scheduled or reserved November 7th as the date. Is that correct, Megan? I think it's November 7th. That sounds right. Which is a Monday evening. It just so happens that November is also very busy. Everybody's busy. But we plan to begin to notify the community of that date, who will be in attendance, the structure, the format, if folks are interested in coming in and learning more about our processes and procedures related to school safety. So I just wanted to mention this because it will only be less than a week away when we next have the opportunity to meet as a governance team.
Thank you. All right. So I am going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.